It is time for Sporting a Cause with Willie Hallihan. Of course, Willie joins us on a Sunday morning just after the start of the 10 o'clock hour. Willie hosts the site sportingacause.com, where not only does he blog, but he has a terrific chronological calendar of coming events, of events that are all fundraisers and somehow, some way, sports related. And we like to take a look at some of the things coming up in the next week or two. Willie, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Marshall. As always, thanks for having me on. Yeah, this week is no different than past weeks. There are some events actually being held. There's some that are ongoing, and a couple have been canceled. And well, let me get right to it. Today, there are a couple of ongoing events that I've talked about multiple times. I'm just going to mention them because I've covered them well. The Connecticut FKT Challenge. That's a long-distance running event that utilizes Connecticut trails. That goes through September. It's an accumulative kind of event where you log your miles and turn them in. Details I have on sportingacause.com. Also, the Josh Billings Run-A-Ground Triathlon, that too is ongoing. One event that is actually going on and is virtual this year is the 19th annual Race Around the Lake at Brody Park in New Hartford. They waited as long as they could for deciding to turn it virtual. You can certainly they encourage people to go and use the route. It goes around their pond there. The vistas are beautiful, they say. And that's taking place today. The one that isn't is the High Watch Recovery Center Sprint for Sobriety 5K. That was supposed to be held in Kent, and that's been canceled. But they also have a golf tournament coming up later in September at the club at River Oaks, and that's still going on. And that raises money, as would have the 5K, for people who can't afford treatment at their facility. Also canceled, it should have been held today, was the Harlem Valley Rail Ride. That was a massive bicycle ride that's held over in the Millerton area. They had postponed their ride very early in the pandemic. They postponed their ride by a month, thinking that it would be safe by now. Many people were thinking that, but they recently realized that it's not. So they ended up canceling that event. And I have a couple of events that are actually taking place today. The Race for Life at Foothills BMX. That's that bicycle off-track bicycle racing facility in Torrington I spoke of a couple of weeks ago. They race every Sunday, and throughout the year there are a handful of those races that are fundraisers, and today is one of them. They're racing to raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Also today is the .22 caliber rifle accuracy shoot at the Northwest Connecticut Rod and Gun Club in Canaan. They're back with some of their events, and that's good to see. As always, any money they raise, they use to upgrade their facilities, and they do conservation work that a lot of people might not know about. They do good things in the community. Now, starting Tuesday for the month of September is the Great Cycle Challenge USA 2020. This is a month-long bicycling event where you log your miles and raise money for the Children's Cancer Research Fund. And then, Marshall, we're on to Labor Day weekend, September 3rd through 7th, the historic Festival 38 Labor Day weekend at Lime Rock Park. Starting on Thursday, the Vintage Race and Sports Car Parade, which has always been held, will be held. As usual, it's a 17-mile meander through the area towns, 100 vehicles, but this year it won't stop in Falls Village like it has in the past, where it becomes a car show and people gather and look. That's not happening. This year, when the parade ends, it just goes back to Lime Rock Park. And the rest of the weekend is different, too, unfortunately, at Lime Rock Park. The Friday, which is a practice day, along with Saturday and Monday, which are racing days, are non-spectator events. And Sunday, that day, they will allow spectators to come to see the cars during the concourse. It's a hugely popular event, but you have to get your tickets in advance. There will be no ticket sales at the gate, and I believe and you can verify this for me. I think they might be limiting the number of people. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, they are.
They are, okay.
That's exactly why they're doing. That's the only way they can control the crowd size to meet the state regulations.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And as I reported in the past, the 5th through the 7th Labor Day weekend, the Goshen Fair has been canceled. I cover fairs on my website because they almost always have a sports-related element in there, like the lumberjacking events and that people love to see. Anyway, the Goshen Fair is canceled for this year. The Kentucky Derby Social, which is a collaboration between the Salisbury Rotary Club and the Canaan Exchange Club. It's basically a Kentucky Derby party that they use to raise money for their scholarships. They moved it along with the Kentucky Derby from May to this coming weekend because the Kentucky Derby is going to be run without spectators, but they decided to cancel because for gathering reasons. The month of September also was to hold the Heritage Walks. I've spoken about this in the past, and this is an incredible event. Even though it's canceled, it's worth talking about, and you'll see why in a minute. This is an event it uses, in good years, the 4 weekends of September to give 80 guided tours of some of the area's most interesting places. Some are natural or historic places. And although they're not, the walks aren't being held this year, a lot of these places are still open to see. There will be no guided tours, but you can still go and visit them on your own. And you should check out the Upper Housatonic area, heritage area, for information about that. You can go to my website and get the link there. September 6th, the Bob Wernanke scholarship race. We're back at the Foothills BMX facility for another fundraising race. This raises scholarship money for graduating high school senior who is a rider in that organization. And there's one more event, Marshall. I pulled this out of sequence from the calendar because I wanted to talk about it last. It'll be the subject of my blog this week. Tomorrow, the 31st, is International Overdose Awareness Day. It's not received a whole lot of press, if at all. And the day it'll come and go, and probably nobody will be paying much attention about it and that's too bad. Just 6 months ago, this is a statement about our times, maybe about how we think. But 6 months ago, Marshall, right, before the middle of March, when the pandemic news took over everything, the biggest crisis we had in this country was the opioid overdose crisis. The number of column inches that newspapers devoted to that crisis equaled what we now read about the COVID-19, the pandemic, and all of that. There were stories about the sad stories of opioid overdose deaths, or some heroic stories about people who were saved using Narcan and so forth. There are all these stories about collaborations among social agencies and law enforcement and private foundations, all looking for ways to address this crisis. And then in the middle of March, the pandemic took over, and you have not seen a word about the opioid overdose crisis since. It's almost as if we can't handle more than one crisis at a time. I'm not sure if it's our failing or maybe the media. I'm not sure, but the crisis did not go away. In fact, I just saw a news item on TV last night from Hartford Healthcare, and they have shown that there's been an 18% increase in overdose deaths in the last 6 months. They attribute it to the pandemic with all the stress and everything that goes with that. And we're talking 130 people a day in the United States die of drug overdoses. That's 70,000 people a year that we're just not talking about anymore. and this is the time for me to talk about it because of this overdose awareness day tomorrow, and along with that, in the years past, over at the walkway over the Hudson, there's been an overdose awareness walk. That was supposed to be tomorrow, but it's been canceled along with all kinds of other events because of the pandemic. And it's too bad because we need that awareness more than ever right now. The Matt Herring Foundation is the organization. It's a small nonprofit that sponsors the Overdose Awareness Walk. And the work they do is exactly what we need. They work to assist people who are struggling with addiction along with their families, and they're looking ways to address it. And like I say, that's what we need right now. It's funny how we respond to news, and I wouldn't have thought that something as big as overdose deaths would be relative, but it is, because it's been 100% supplanted by pandemic news. And but just so everybody knows, the crisis is alive and well. We just haven't been talking about it.
You know, it's interesting. Just last week, I did a story. The Red Hook Police issued a press release. A Red Hook policeman saved a teen from an overdose, and I think that happened last Wednesday evening. There's a report of an unconscious resident not breathing. The police officer went to the home, administered that drug that helps bring people back from death, and the person lived. And so they issued a press release to it, and at the end of the press release, they mentioned this all happened a week before National Overdose Awareness Day. So the great thing about not only them releasing the information so we could put it on, but they released the information in a way that also promoted what is happening on the 31st, which is National Overdose Awareness Day. So,
good. I'm glad to hear that.
That is one thing that strikes close to home, and I think regional media does a very good job at covering things like this. But national media, it doesn't matter what national media you watch, whether it's Fox, NBC, CBS, whoever, CNN, they are just totally consumed by the pandemic and by the election. And so other important stories get the short shrift. It's just the way it is. It's unfortunate.
It is the way it is.
But thank you for bringing it up and putting it in the blog. And we, of course, we're going to talk about this again tomorrow on the morning show. But it's nice to get a little bit of talk about it again today as well.
Okay, Marshall. Well, thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk about things like this.
We'll speak with you next week, Willie.
Okay, Marshall. Have a good week.
Take care. Willie Hallihan, Sporting a Cause. You'll find that website at sportingacause.com.